Kidneys are extremely important for the overall health of the human body. For one, they regulate extracellular fluid volume for an adequate quantity of plasma to keep blood flowing to vital organs. They also regulate osmolarity by keeping fluid from being too diluted or concentrated with respect to the solutes carried within the fluid. Kidneys are also responsible for maintaining ion concentrations including sodium, potassium, and calcium. pH in blood plasma is regulated as well, making sure it never becomes too acidic or basic by regulating ions. The kidney filters out a variety of water-soluble waste products and environmental toxins into the urine for excretion. They also produce hormones which are vital to water balance, salt measures, and blood pressure. When kidneys shut down or begin to fail, there can be some major health effects that ensue. If your kidneys stop working completely, your body fills with extra water and waste products. This condition is called uremia. Your hands or feet may swell. You will feel tired and weak because your body needs clean blood to function properly. When prolonged, this condition can cause seizures, coma, or even death. There are two main forms of treatment that are common in practice. One is dialysis, which is separated into two parts. Hemodialysis is a form of dialysis which filters the blood to remove any waste products, and the clean blood is returned back into the bloodstream. This treatment must be done 3 to 4 hours, about 3 times a week. Peritoneal dialysis is where a fluid which captures toxins is inserted into the abdomen and after a few hours is drained away. This form of dialysis can be performed by patients themselves, so daily doctor visits are not necessary. The second most common treatment is transplantation, which utilizes a donor's kidney. The main problem with this is immune rejection.
One example of a complete and legitimate clinical trial would have to be the one sponsored by the University of Miami in collaboration with the Immune Tolerance Network. Completed in October 2nd, 2012, this clinical trial had the main goal of discovering whether donor stem cell infusions could be used to prevent organ rejection following kidney transplants. At the beginning of this clinical trial, a chemical called alemtuzumab is administered along with other drugs to suppress the immune system and to kill white blood cells. After the transfusion, the 4 randomly selected participants are given stem cell infusions for bone marrow, while the 5 remaining participants are given nothing. The idea is that donor or bone marrow stem cells will produce white blood cells that won't react negatively to the new organ. 3 out of 4 participants did not experience organ rejection following this. Results have been published in PubMed.
To recap the results of this clinical trial, we have a diagram with us. From this diagram, we can see that the clinical trial had 9 participants. 5 of them were in the control group. 4 patients received donor stem cell injections. 1 patient out of the 4 subsequently developed antibody-mediated rejection, leading to graft failure. Since this clinical trial was published in an online journal, this trial seems legitimate. This trial has not lost contact with its patients who have been operated on and has been in touch with them for 3 years. This trial is explained in a very scientific level in the clinicaltrials.gov website, and that shows that it does not intend to make any financial gain from this exercise.
The second study that will be covered is a reduction of hemodialysis arteriovenous fistula failure. This study is being conducted by the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. The Mayo Clinic is a very prestigious institution for medical treatment and research, recognized worldwide for its breakthroughs in modern medicine. The study is active and it is recruiting, meaning it's in its beginning stages. The status under the government website is that it is currently in phase 1. This phase is dedicated to collecting data on how safe the treatment is in humans. The results are constantly monitored and recorded, whether adverse reactions are observed or progress.
Now discussing the actual treatment, it is important to first discuss what hemodialysis arteriovenous fistula or AV fistula is. Hemodialysis is a treatment for kidney failure that filters a patient's blood in a dialyzer, essentially performing the function of one's kidneys. An arteriovenous fistula is a connection made between an artery and a vein, typically in the forearm or upper arm. This connection provides extra pressure to the vein, allowing for stronger and larger blood vessels that can withstand regular hemodialysis sessions. AV fistula failure can occur from the lack of maturing from the AV fistula or lesions that develop. This clinical study conducted by the Mayo Clinic proposes using autologous adipose-derived mesenchymal stem cells during the implantation of the AV fistula in order to reduce hemodialysis AV fistula failure. The primary measurement of effectiveness would be the diameter of the patient's outflow vein with a secondary measurement of blood flow. This would then be compared to a control group of patients who received the typical AV fistula procedure without the mesenchymal stem cells. As for the implantation of the stem cells, not very many specifics of the procedure are given at clinicaltrials.gov or the Mayo Clinic website itself, which is perhaps the main drawback to this trial in terms of legitimacy. Perhaps exact information on the procedure is meant to be discussed by prospective patients and their physicians with the researchers. The more detailed information would definitely improve the validity of this trial. Although not exact details are given, the science behind using mesenchymal stem cells for this operation would make sense. The goal of this trial would be to increase the strength of the veins, arteries, and connections used in AV fistulas to prevent lesions and assist maturing, and the ability of mesenchymal stem cells to differentiate into muscular tissue and fatty tissue would assist in the bolstering of the AV fistula. At the bottom of the post, it claims that the study involves a US FDA-regulated drug product. While the procedure is homologous and autologous, the vague description makes it unclear whether or not the mesenchymal stem cells are altered upon removal and before implanting. So, this question would most definitely need to be answered before one is to participate in the trial. Besides the lack of description of the treatment, this appears to be a fairly legitimate study because of who is conducting the trial, the use of a control group, the autologous and homologous use of stem cells, and the apparent regulation by the FDA.
The kidney is vital to the everyday body functions, which is why we chose to look into it. When looking into clinical trials, we based their legitimacy on things like control groups, reliable sources, and whether or not they had FDA approval. We looked into two studies. The first one was prevention of organ rejection by donor stem cell infusion. This was done by the University of Miami in collaboration with the Immune Tolerance Network. Overall, we thought this was a legitimate study since they have not lost contact with any of their patients in 3 years, and they have published their results. The second study we looked into was reducing hemodialysis arteriovenous fistula failure. This was done by the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and they're currently still in phase 1. We did notice a few things when we were looking into the case, though. One was that there was room for a better explanation of the procedure. And there are no results because the process is still going.